All right. Now, for our first conversation for tonight, we'll be diving into Nigeria's rapidly evolving digital landscape, a space where artificial intelligence, the creative arts, biotechnology, and blockchain are no longer just buzzwords, but powerful tools reshaping economies, industries, and opportunities. As the world shifts into a new era of innovation, one question remains crucial in the mind of Nigerians. How can Nigerian youths, take advantage of these emerging technologies, not just to survive, but to lead? Our guest tonight brings insights from the front lines of tech innovation and youth development. He's here to help us understand where Nigeria stands, where the world is going, and how young people, you and I, can position ourselves for relevance in this changing digital age. Our guest is Engineer Nzube Chikwado Ndiokwelu. He's the founder of Beacon Smith Collective and the National Ambassador of Citra Nigeria. Good evening, Nzube.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Welcome. Nice to have you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so how did you get into tech? I mean, that's my first curious question. Have you always known you'd be a tech bro, or was it something you picked up along life?
I think, you know how they say necessity is the mother of all invention?
Yes.
It was something like that for me in my own situation. I actually was faced with a situation where I had to make a choice between a paid internship in civil engineering or actually a non-paid internship with industrial information technology with a tech company in Enugu State here. And as at that period, I made the difficult choice of choosing the non-paid internship because I felt like the direction of technology was moving in that information technology, and you know, as much as having a paid internship in a civil construction site might have been suited to, you know, my financial needs as an engineer, I chose the road less taken, and from there it's been quite a journey.
Quite a journey.
So has it paid off, or is it paying off, or would it pay off? Before we get right into our conversation for tonight, because it will form a premise for the questions we might have. Has it paid off, or is it paying off in the long run? Is it worth your experience and training? Has it been worth it so far?
Well, sincerely speaking, I've actually had quite an adventurous career, if I may say, and I believe that unconventional path has actually really exposed me to quite a journey that you wouldn't necessarily even believe it. Accidentally kickstarted Enugu Tech's scene by hosting the first ever festivals for Google developer groups in Enugu State in 2015. Impressive. And this is the 10-year anniversary of the festivals and, you know, community we actually kickstarted in that moment. Okay. And as at that moment, we never really saw the future and saw 10 years from now and seeing that Enugu's biggest tech community would be something that our efforts would actually help seed. And from there, actually delved into sports, organizing Enugu's first Coal City Marathon, which was an international marathon. And from there, went into the energy sector in oil and gas, and I'm back in tech right now. So just that singular decision that I wanted to, you know, focus on information technology right at the beginning of a new era, it equipped me with skills and techniques, you know, which enabled me, you know, stay relevant for years to come. And right now I'm currently in a phase where you could say I'm reinventing myself for the new revolution, which is the fourth industrial revolution, and there are emerging technologies coming out there. So I'm back to my roots again and actually, you know, learning and leading from the front again.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
With the way Nigeria is now, would you say, is it fair to say that Nigeria is becoming a, you know, consumer nation instead of creator of technology?
Well, unfortunately, it's something we're really locked into by nature of our, you know, the position within the tech, you know, industry. We're more of users of products which we didn't actually contribute to the creation of them. So let's say if you take a look at robotics, we're not frontline leaders in humanoid robotics, or manufacturing the necessary chips, or actually producing rare earth metals which actually are required by these critical industries. Frontier models are not being trained or developed in Africa here. So we are more or less, using already developed technologies out there, and the job we have is to deepen our industry to the level where we then have a much more mature ecosystem, which then leads to us having such fruits as a result of the density of our ecosystem. So just like we all know, you must crawl before you run. So the challenge is we aim high, but we must also do the necessary work of deepening the quality and the depth of our ecosystem. The talents have to be here, and we basically can't always expect everyone to leave the Nigerian shores, looking for greener pastures out there, and expect that our best talents are actually going to leave Nigerian shores, and then those that remain are going to have the ability to compete at world level. So we must have such a large density that even if we have people migrating or immigrating for better opportunities, we still have an enormous pool of talent, still local and residents here, to the extent that you could now expect a future where those that left the Nigerian shores and then went to improve their craft and worked in different companies could come back in such a way that you can see knowledge transfer from those that are actually left the shores of Nigeria. So us being consumers, I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. It's just the stage where we are, but like you say, we still have a way to catch up, and we can catch up.
You mentioned crawling. At this very stage, can we say Nigeria is crawling when it gets to do with technology, or we're still in bed sleeping?
There's a difference between when you say Nigerians and Nigeria. So
I was going to ask
Nigerians are
Nigeria, not Nigerians.
Yeah, Nigerians are the frontier of these technologies.
Nations should know them for this.
Yeah.
Nigeria as a nation.
Okay.
Are we crawling, or we're still in bed?
You could say we're still crawling because we still need critical infrastructure, and that's the bedrock of every single thing. So when you look at the critical infrastructure for these emerging technologies, you take a look at energy. We still must have reliable energy, that's electricity, rolled out to every part of the country. You still also have to have reliable broadband. That's another critical infrastructure that you need. And then you need data centers. So right now, Nigeria is still in the process of constructing its first Tier 3 data center, which is being done or undertaken by MTN. So we still have to, have this critical investments in critical infrastructure, which are what actually underpins or what is the fulcrum for this emerging technologies. So for us to leapfrog through certain iterations, we must, first of all, get our foundations, and then from that foundation, that's what you can then now expect the professionals to then build upon.
Now, speaking from the standpoint of a Nigerian youth, and then you said Nigeria is calling, do you think that Nigeria is entirely receptive to the idea of technology? I'm sure that in some sectors, tech is okay. We can make use of tech in this hospital, or maybe to generate or to build some things. Now, as a Nigerian who has gone out of his way to learn, you have friends who've traveled and may not want to come back because of the system. Do you think the reason why we are still crawling is because the system of Nigeria is not fully receptive to the takeover, quote unquote, of technology?
I think if I'm to rephrase or paraphrase your question in a shorter way, this deals with the adoption curve of technology across different sectors. So you might find that within certain sectors there's greater adoption in those sectors, and then in some sectors there's still a greater barrier to adoption within those sectors. So there are some sectors where you basically expect Nigeria to really have a greater adoption. I mean, take a look at the telecommunication sector and the banking sector. You could say that there's deeper penetration of technology within those sectors. And if you take a look at, let's say, the agricultural and the healthcare sector, like you mentioned, we still have a long way to go within those sectors with respect to adopting, the state-of-the-art technologies to actually, increase productivity and capture more gains within those sectors. So, sectors, I think it has to be something that you take a look at on sector by sector approach. There are barriers to adoption to certain areas, and there are some places where you may realize that there's greater resistance to adoption within those things. But it could actually, be a factor due to cultural factors, or sensitization factors, or let's say the infrastructure constraints. So let's take a look at banking as a sector now. Banking has, greater level of investment within, critical core IT infrastructure. They actually pay a whole lot to have their core banking staffs, their core IT staffs, and they rely on mobile apps, which has to go hand in hand with the telecommunication sector. So as the telecommunication sector accelerates progress, you can have the banking sector, deepen its services. So you have roll-up of ATM machines, automated teller machines, which rely on wireless networks or broadband networks to actually facilitate your transactions. So you realize that the banking sector could actually roll out greater innovations as a result of the fact that as the telecom sector accelerates, they are able to invest more within these technologies. Now, when you compare with different sectors, let's say agricultural sector and the healthcare sector, like we use an example, there are siloed units within those areas. So you tend to have private hospitals which may have a greater level of investment, and then you tend to see that they actually have broadband within that facility, and they make use of state-of-the-art technologies. And then when you move towards the governmental sectors, which are bigger infrastructure or healthcare systems, and you find that they struggle with rolling out such critical let's say IT support within those places, because you have to first of all take a look at the will of the government to see this as something that is going to require that level of investment, because it requires a huge level of investment. And more often than not, the government outsources let's say healthcare and is run as a business. It's not necessarily seen as is a basic right for every Nigerian that you must have access to healthcare or quality healthcare. So they actually provide funding to the hospitals, which is mostly for administrative purposes, and it may not be able to cover from things which they may put on the lower rank of critical items that are required. So you might actually go to a hospital and there's no reliable backup power. And if there's no reliable backup power, you're not going to prioritize having an internet facility or internet support system there, because if the power is not non-existent, what's the purpose of having that? So if you take a look at, let's say, the agricultural sector, these are people that are in remote areas, and some of those places may not actually have deepened broadband services within those areas. So you can imagine a system where you require a huge, like a concerted investment within those areas to actually, capture gains within those places. So, for example, in agriculture, you now have the deployment of drones, which are now being used to, target, let's say, application of fertilizers, weeding. You now have drones which use lasers to actually control weeds within farms. You actually have mechanized drones which deliver, let's say, water through, and it actually like sprays and irrigates, or fumigates the different farms out there. And you see China actually adopting these technologies, but it's a lot easier for them to, roll out those adoption, because the manufacturing industry is just right there with them. It's, you don't keep your raw materials away from, where your produce is. So it's a question of, let's say, the industry has to mature to a greater extent, and if it's already now saturated in areas that have the ability to roll out the investments on their own privately, you then now see the manufacturers, or let's say the producers of these advanced technologies, seek out more, areas to explore.
Okay, so let's bring it back home to our parents, our guardians. I came across a story some time ago where they said the Chinese people in school, they don't give the students calculators or anything like that. You have to calculate with your brain. That's a way of structuring them into being a good, thinker and what have you. How can parents actually help the younger ones, to prepare them for an AI technology-driven future? Because these same parents are the ones that when you're on your phone, they'll discourage you, drop this phone, you play a lot. When you're on the computer, they'll say you're too young to use the computer, from the understanding of how they started, how they are not exposed to things like this. How can these parents help the younger ones to be prepared for AI?
Everything requires moderation, and you have to basically regulate, the introduction of technologies to children. And there are exceptions where you may actually have, outliers, people that are actually, able to do incredible things with these technologies. And it's more like saying, you don't want to actually have a child learning physics, but at some point you realize that there are children that by the time they get to 12 years, they're already almost at, advanced level physics. And how would they actually have adopted this level of knowledge, if not as a result of the fact that they had access to, a much more advanced literature than their peers? So that's the same way I expect that you might actually find some children have a deeper intuition around some of these emerging technologies. And in a world where we are more afraid about AI, we mostly don't always imagine a future when the AI then moves from the software level and embraces the hardware and becomes more like an operating system, and no longer as a tool which we basically access from our own devices. It becomes something that's much more interactive. So you may have, small pet robots that are able to communicate with children. You might have humanoid robots who are tutors. Would you actually say that as a result of the fact that you do not wish to expose the children to, let's say, tablet devices which have this artificial intelligences, that you don't now want them to access some of these innovations when they arrive? So nuance is actually always required to understand the balance there. I encourage parents and even my own kids to go out, explore the world, interact with the real world, because you see, it's easy to get sucked into the digital world. And for kids, you basically need to develop your right and left hemisphere, and you do that by actually, interacting with nature, being curious, playing with your fingers, figuring out the world by your own self. So when you're actually interacting with devices like this, you are being, directed towards a direction. I mean, it's something somebody curated and put out there to consume your attention. And the most important paper that was released in artificial intelligence or machine learning, the topic of the paper is attention is all you need. So if the children requires to pay attention, we then need to ensure that we don't, introduce things that are actually going to reduce their attention spans, because that's what some of these devices do. So basically, first things first, you must realize that trying to educate your children through YouTube is not always the best method. you must, be physically present there, be the one to actually help them with their homeworks. Don't outsource it to the devices to help them do that.
That's when you know those homeworks now.
Yeah. Even if you don't, you still, get a tutor to actually, help them out. But for bonding's sake, it's always good to be the one to, guide them through those assignments whenever they come back from school.
All right, let's speak blockchain.
Yeah.
Right. So what are the risks and potentials of, adopting the blockchain, the crypto in Nigeria? What are the chances? Because I'm sure that Nigeria is not really receptive to some extent of crypto. But what are the risks and potentials, the benefits of adopting it into the system here in Nigeria?
Okay, so when it comes to, let me start with the risks. Let's start from the challenges that we might have.
Yes.
Some of the systems that we already have within our society are basically what you call systems that rely on trust.
Okay.
So let's say you're trying to get a job, and people are mostly informally going to say man no man, and you're getting a job based on who you know within that system. If you have a decentralized ledger, which is what underpins your recruitment process, which means that it's going to be transparent, which means it's immutable. We can basically see what the outcome of the results, or let's say the entrance or the merit exams are, and it can be tampered. You have a system which is then now going to shift from something that relies on who you know to something that now shifts over to something that is much more merit-based. And that may not be something that, let's say, the old guard or an old order might find convenient. And as a result of that, you might see somebody say, no, I don't want to adopt something that is actually going to bring transparency to a system.
Yes.
And you could actually also, because more often than not, when people talk about the blockchain, they're mostly always looking at the financial part of blockchain, and they forget about other incredible use cases which the blockchain can actually introduce to the system. So let's say we have our land records, and people tend to complain that so oftentimes these things are always doctored, and people change different information and tamper with a certificate of occupancy or transfer rights or deeds to somebody. And if you actually have an immutable ledger which is always going to capture every single change to the database, because that's basically what the blockchain is decentralized ledger technology, distributed ledger technology. So it's basically a digital ledger which provides proof of every single record inside that place. So if there's any single tamper to that ledger, you must actually see it, and it will be recorded on chain. And anybody anywhere could actually spin up a blockchain node, depending on the type of blockchain it is, and then actually, have access to it and see what everybody has been doing on it. So there are certain risks which I see from a point of view that the risks that blockchain poses for us within Nigeria is it's going to disrupt the old order. It's going to, disrupt the old system. It's going to create new systems which are going to be trustless. They're going to be merit-based, and it's actually going to be immutable, meaning that it's tamper-proof. We're not going to have situations where you hear that the record houses are being burnt, or that the monkey swallowed some records, or some files were mysteriously disappeared. We could actually move to a system where we move beyond that paradigm. Within the financial system, it's always the risks are much more exaggerated.
Yes.
Because every single thing we do seems to rely on economics, and there's always money being transacted. But like I said, there's so many applications of blockchain beyond the financial way that we know. It could actually serve within the electoral system to ensure that we have tamper-proof votes, and that if somebody voted, your proof is your proof. So those are some of the risks. So when we move to potentials, you could actually see the blockchain solving a whole lot more than it actually, seem to disrupt. So, like I said, it's probably going to disrupt some of the existing order or the way we do things and introduce something much more novel. And the potentials within that system are actually quite very explosive. So, for example, now, the first, or so let's say the OG blockchain is known as Bitcoin.
Yes.
And all we've been able to do with Bitcoin since inception has been just to hold it. That's what people have been doing with Bitcoin. Now you have protocols, emerging new protocols, which are actually, on the radar of the White House Digital Asset Report, like Citria and different other Bitcoin layer 2s, which are now innovating on this protocol, which we know. So blockchain as we've known it and the Bitcoin that we've known for a long time, which has been very popular, has just been popular as just a store of value. Now it's now being programmable. And if you're able to program Bitcoin and you're actually, combine the different strengths which it then now inherits now. You have the programmability, you now have privacy on one side, you have store of value on another side. You can then now imagine a situation where we build things that are actually trustless within our society. Now let me give you an example of an incredible potential which you can actually achieve with the blockchain. We know Ajo, the Esusu,
Yes.
the basic contributory fund, which we basically always do. The biggest risks that this system actually has is, you can actually have the custodian of the money abscond with the money.
Yes.
Or somebody might be the first recipient of the payouts and the
And
person
it's
will probably like,
hard.
no, I'm no longer doing it again. You get, and then also the funds that you actually contribute, you don't actually earn any interest on it. It's just lying idle. It's not productive.
Yes.
And you can then now think of a future where you can design a system built on our native systems, like this Isusu Ajo is a native construct of how we've been able to, collectively build wealth. And we can actually do something that runs on a trustless system, requires you not to trust anybody. And you can actually earn yield on that collective pool, and you can actually use logic or maths to encode a system where you basically then now have you are disincentivized to take away or run away with your own payouts, and nobody can actually rob or let's say run away with your treasury.
Yes.
And then from there you can actually unlock more things like credits, and loans through your reputation within such a system. So these are some of the potentials that you can explore from the financial side of blockchain. So I feel like let me just
All right, let's get to know about your activities in the tech. Lately you've been very busy in that area, and let's bring it back also to Nigeria. With your experience in the tech world, which of the sectors do you think the government is blind to, technology-wise and AI-wise?
Okay, today I joined the Enugu state government and state commissioner of science and innovation alongside the Gombe state commissioner of science and innovation, and we were at Renaissance University today for the pre-campus tour of Enugu Tech Festival. Now, I must actually commend the direction which the Enugu state government is going on that front, because they are tackling it head on, and it's not, from every indication, it's not being approached from an angle of we're just trying to do this for fame or for glory, or it's more like it's a civilizational mission. They understand the juncture we are in and understand that the youths are the bedrock of technology. The future depends on them, and we must unlock that latent, talent within them before you actually start conceiving ideas of Japa or immigrating out of Nigeria. Contribute. Don't be a black box. Be a glass box. Let the world know what you're capable of. From right now that you're in the university, start now. If you're a creator, start now. these emerging technologies that are out there, it's really, today, there were so many updates within the tech space. Google released the Gemini Nano Pro, which means that you and I and anyone out there could actually become an incredible product designer. You no longer require a brand, like let's assume you want to change, create a flyer, and which you would probably require a graphic designer to do that. That job is gradually being wiped away, because you can basically instruct and speak to the AI model, and it actually gives you high fidelity on the instructions you give to it. Soon Adobe Photoshop might be something of the past. I didn't really believe that until I saw it today. Now, for my own activities within the space now, there's incredible traction within the blockchain space and the AI space. That's what I've always, noticed immensely, because within Enugu State, from January to now, Enugu has really had incredible builders pushing at the frontier of these technologies. And the evidence is there, is really, really out there. Now we have Enugu builders in Argentina joining the Ethereum DevCon conference. Okay. We have Kevin, the convener of Ethereum Enugu. He's already in Argentina, and some other the Web3 conference organizers. They're all in Argentina. This where the leading minds in the blockchain industries are converging. I myself lead an emerging blockchain protocol within the Bitcoin space. So that simply means Enugu has a national lead in the Bitcoin space. We have somebody at the frontier in the Ethereum space. If you go into AI, I won an award this year at the Festival Niger AI Film Festival for the best short film created with AI. Now, this is a testament to the fact that we are here within this industry, we are in this local ecosystem, and we are pushing the frontier from this state. We're saying we're not leaving Enugu State, we're not going to another state, we're not going to Lagos, we're going to stay here, we're going to build, and we'll keep building. So it's actually been motivating a lot of people. It's been inspiring more people to actually say, yes, I can do that. And there are now much more builder hubs emerging. Places that you call builder hubs, like a facility which I run, the Bacon Smith's house, which allows you come there, explore the frontier technologies, be it AI models, be it blockchain technologies. If you want to build in the blockchain, you can simply just walk into spaces like that and then join different communities that are actually there, because we converge within these spaces. We organize events within these spaces, we educate ourselves, and anybody that is willing to learn. Now,
both persons who have no prior knowledge of tech, you can attend.
Newbies. Now the truth is this, if I'm going to be sincere to you, gossip and showbiz, or should I say entertainment, is much more attractive to the youths. That's the bigger challenge. You're basically battling to capture the attention of people that are really distracted by things that are not really productive. So what we do is not glossing. We spend a lot of time and efforts and resources trying to ensure that we attract new people to come and learn these things. Now, this reminds me of the early days of when computer networking and web programming came out. Google, Facebook, Yahoo, and some other companies, I think BlackBerry also, and some leading telecom, Sony Ericsson during that era, they were actually conducting free workshops, begging people to become developers, begging people to actually become technologists in that era. Not many people adopted it at that moment, and guess what? Right now, you have everybody wanting to be a tech bro, and now you are going to then now pay a huge amount of money to learn that emerging technology, which it was in 2010. Now, right now, the same scenario is playing around. And I can only say this because I was around from 2010 to 2015 to see when we were begging people to attend events like that.
So what can break the narrative? Because if these youths are not interested, they don't have that thing that forces them to come into tech, what really can be done to bring them, to make tech attractive?
Platforms like the Enugu Tech Festival.
Okay.
The government has a greater ability to mobilize people en masse. I would require a huge amount of resources, network, and manpower to actually do what was actually done within the university we went to today. But you could actually basically see the government write letters to the different universities and tell them, we're coming to sensitize students on an upcoming event like this. And when they do things like that, they embrace and encourage the emerging tech leaders and existing tech leaders within the ecosystem to come along with the government. So that way, we no longer have to struggle for an audience.
Yes.
You basically are put in front of your audience and you are able to, bring this gospel
to them.
To them directly.
Thank you so much. I wish we could go on. I mean, I was paying attention. I personally have an interest, but you know how life goes. All right, thank you so much, Engineer Nzube, for joining us. It's been a wonderful time having you with us.
As always.
All right. Pleasure. All right, that was our guest, Engineer Nzube Chikwado Ndiokwelu. Coming up next is our second interview for the night. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.